Tonight's scripture will be taken from the book of Matthew, chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. And I'll be reading out of the New King James Version. Scripture reads, Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out from that region, cried out to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, Send her away, for she cries out after us. But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. And Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour.
Well, good evening. So glad that you've decided to come and worship with us tonight. Special thanks for Chase for putting out that reminder that being a Christian is more than just coming on Sunday morning. It's coming on Sunday evening too. So a little selfishly, I was glad to hear that. So really appreciative of your here. And hopefully you did get a little handout. It's got the title on the top. It has the verses on there. So I encourage you to follow along, to fill that out as you go throughout our lesson with me. And I also encourage you to get out a Bible. That's the whole reason that we're here. So get that Bible out, get the phone out, get the tablet out, and turn over with me to the book of Mark, or chapter 7. And that's where primarily our lesson will come from. And I know I asked Levi to read Matthew's account of the Gentile mother. And I purposely did that. I think there's a lot of good things that you can take, obviously, from both sides of the story. Little things in Matthew that may not be said in Mark. And we will reference both passages, so I encourage you to kind of bookmark one and go back and forth to the other. So with that being said, let's read Mark's account, okay? Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. And from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast out the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and to throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, For this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found the child lying in bed, and the demon was gone. So towards the end of Mark chapter 7, we read here that Jesus has exited Galilee, and he's entered the region of Tyre. And this is, as we know it, Gentile territory. Okay? He entered a house not wanting anyone or any other individual to know where he had gone. He was kind of hiding. Once again, Jesus and his followers, they try to get some rest from the pressures of this constant new ministry that they're providing. But we're told in verse 24 that he could not be hid. Now, that's always the case, is it not? Whenever Jesus is in a person, whenever Jesus is in a family, whenever he's in a church, whenever he's in a community, or just wherever that may be, he simply cannot be hidden. Word will get out that Jesus is in the house. But just for some context here, Jesus is, obviously, he needs some rest. He's just completed a few things. He has just fed the 5,000. He's just calmed a storm. He's just healed, obviously, many people as they go through the different towns in the region that they travel through. And he was confronting religious leaders left and right. And more specifically, Jesus had just concluded wrestling with the Pharisees about what constituted cleanliness. And, well, turn over to Matthew chapter 15, verses 18 through 20. And here we read it says, "For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." So what Jesus is doing here is he's emphasizing that the heart of the individual, that's where the inside, that's where this corruption can take place. It manifests itself outwardly, but it begins in the heart. And his message is pretty simple in this way. But in our lesson tonight, we focus in on a mother who's frantically chasing after Jesus. And you see that she begins to petition him for the help that she needs. And when you read this story, you can kind of understand where this mother's coming from. Can we not? We can understand this mother's heart. She desires for her daughter to be healed, and she keeps asking Jesus, and she will not go away until she gets the answer that she's looking for. So in your handout, this is where we're going to start. In verses 25 and 26, we see the mother and her request. 25 and 26. "But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician birth, and she begged him to cast out the demon of her daughter." So we see here the reason that she came to Jesus was because she was concerned about her daughter, who was demon-possessed and was probably acting out in some type of violence and anger. It may be that this demon is potentially causing bodily harm to this child. This was the situation in the case of another demon-possessed child in Mark 9:22, where the demon often cast that young child into the fire or into the water to destroy him. We also see the reason that she cried. In Matthew 15:22, in his account, it tells that she cried after Jesus. Now this word cry, it doesn't mean this little whimper or this tear. It means to croak. It means to chase after. It's the idea of this loud, persistent shrieking. It's not this little whimper or this cry. And this mother was shouting frantically to Jesus because she needed help. She was heartbroken over the condition of her child, and she was determined to get her daughter the help that she needed. And we see the reason that she called. Verse 25 tells us that this woman had heard of him. Maybe she had heard about how Jesus had healed all sorts of diseases. Maybe she had heard about how he had opened the eyes of the blind, or how he had given sound or hearing back to the deaf, or maybe about how he had driven the demons from a multitude of other people. Maybe she had heard about how Jesus had delivered the man possessed by a legion of demons. And she may have said, if this man can deliver that from a legion of demons, surely he can deliver my sweet daughter from the grip of just one. So this woman came to Jesus because her faith and her hope had been aroused in her heart. This mother came to Jesus because she needed something that at this point society was not able to give her. She was looking for something that not only her region but her religion could not give her. And she needed a solution. And she needed a solution to this problem that she could not provide on her own. She was desperate. She was out of options. So I ask you, how many of you or how many of us can identify with this poor, anxious mother? Maybe you're dealing with a child that is out of control. Maybe you're dealing with financial issues. Maybe you're at your wit's end over some situation in your life and you need help. Maybe you've exhausted every mean that you can possibly think of at your disposal and you have no place else to turn. Maybe it's salvation. Maybe it's restoration. Maybe it's forgiveness. Whatever that need is, the first and foremost, we need to take this lesson from this mother, and that is to get that need to Jesus. He literally invites you throughout the scriptures. I don't know if you remember, I gave an invitation about a week ago, and the focus was on Matthew chapter 11. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, it says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known." And you don't have to bear this burden alone. Bring it to Jesus. Whatever that mountain is, bring it to Jesus because he cares. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7 says, "Casting all of your anxieties on him because he cares for you." It gets reiterated again in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15 and 16. "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in the time of need." So have you taken your needs to Jesus? Sounds like a simple question, but have you taken your needs to Jesus? Not just once, not just twice, but many, many times, over and over again. So we see our mother, and I keep referring to as our mother, but the mother in our story. She comes to Jesus for help, and let's face it, she is coming up against a whole lot of obstacles in our story. You know, she has so many mountains to climb that at some point you even have to wonder if she just thinks it's easier to just give up and walk away. Said, you know what, I can't do it. Barrier after barrier, wall after wall. But the one good thing about the mother is that we see her resolve in verses 27 and 28. Let's see, I flipped too many. The fan keeps blowing my Bible pages over, so. No, it's okay. At 27 and 28, "And he said to her, 'Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs.' But she answered him and said, 'Yes, Lord, not yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs.' And he said to her, 'For this statement you may go your way.' And the demon left his daughter." So we see the resolve from the mother. And you can't help, again, but notice all these obstacles that are placed before her. In 23 to 27, we see multiple obstacles of faith that she had to overcome. She had to overcome many barriers in order just to secure the healing of her daughter. And she seems to meet resistance at every request and at every turn. But let's look at some of the specific obstacles that she had to face. Number one, she faced the obstacle of race. Verse 26 tells us that this woman was from Tyre and Sidon. In Matthew, his account, in verse 22, it tells us that she was a Canaanite. And this reveals two things about our mother. First, she was descended from a cursed people. Okay? When Joshua led the people of Israel into Canaan, they had been commanded to totally destroy the Canaanites. In Deuteronomy 7, chapter 2, it says, "And when the Lord your God gives them over to you, and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You shall make no covenant with them, and you show no mercy to them." So we see that she was a member of a doomed race. And secondly, coming along with that, and the region that she lived in, she was from a region known for extremely vile religious practices. So she also had to overcome the obstacle of religion. She came to Jesus, she called out to him and said, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David." And here she was, a Gentile mother, crying out to the Jewish Messiah. And when you kind of step back and you think about that, she really had no right to come to Jesus through the door of Judaism. She was a Gentile. And according to Matthew's account in verse 23, Jesus gave her the response that she deserved. He answered her not a word. He ignored her. Not only this, but our mother is facing the obstacle of racism. When the disciples see and they hear this Gentile calling out to their Messiah, they react by telling Jesus to what? Bring her in? Give her a hug? No, they say send her away. They wanted nothing to do with her. She was not one of their people. And in their eyes, she was different, and that was enough to justify simply not caring about her at all. Next, she faces the obstacle of rejection. As Jesus speaks to this woman, his words probably appear harsh to our ears. I know it did to mine when I read it over and over again. They must have shaken her to her core, and they probably broke her heart. In Matthew's account, in verses 23 through 26, it adds a lot more detail concerning this conversation. First, we know that Jesus, he simply ignores her. It's as if he turns and he shuts out the cries, the shrieking cries for help. And then he tells her that his whole purpose in coming to this world was to reach the lost sheep of Israel. And when she persists, Jesus tells her that she is a dog and does not deserve the children's bread. The disciples rejected her, and now it appears that Jesus himself is rejecting her too. And our fifth R, the obstacle of reality. Reality is sitting in. The realities of the situation are harsh for her. Her daughter, again, is possessed by a demon. She was a member of a doomed race. These religious men didn't seem to care about her or her situation at all. Her situation, from this angle, couldn't be any more hopeless. And some of us are probably looking at some of the same barriers today, are we not? You might be lost, and you know that you need Jesus, but you feel like you have no right to come to him. Maybe you've experienced racism, or maybe you've experienced the rejection of religious people around you, yet you still want to see your life change. Well, the great thing is that Jesus Christ will not turn you away. In John chapter 6, verse 37, he says, "All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never cast out." You know, at this point in our story, maybe it all seemed lost for a moment because Jesus was silent. And this is one point that I want to get across and I want to highlight. And this is a tough pill to swallow for not only those who are new to their journey with Jesus, but for those of us who have been on this journey for a very long time. That sometimes God is silent. And that hurts sometimes, doesn't it? Sometimes you feel that God is silent or that he's not answering the prayer that you give him. But God's silence is not always or not an indication of his unwillingness to meet your need. Sometimes God's silence serves to temper our faith and to remind us that he operates on a whole different schedule than what we do. I know we often say it's on his time, not my time. So maybe instead of focusing on the obstacles, we need to be focusing on the opportunities, like this mother in our story. In verse 27, we see the opportunities of faith. So as Jesus, he speaks with this woman, he never slams the door of hope in her face, does he? We read and we say that Jesus says, "Let the children first be filled." And that word "first" was exactly what this brokenhearted mother needed to hear. Jesus did not say, "You cannot have what you are looking for." He simply said, "I have come to the children of Israel, and they must be filled first." And she took that to mean that seconds were available. Now, I don't know about you. I know you've seen my dad. I know you've seen me. We love seconds. Thanksgiving, you pile that plate up high, you eat it, you get a little bit of everything. Seconds, that's the time where, you know what, hey, maybe the mashed potatoes weren't that good. I'm not going to go around. You know, you can really focus your plate in here. I love seconds. But she took that means that there were seconds available. See, these obstacles that were thrown up by Jesus were not placed there to discourage and to defeat this woman, but the obstacles were placed there to mature her faith, to build her faith one step at a time. And I think it's important to note as we read through Mark 7 to watch that progression. So we see in Mark 7:25, she calls on Jesus based on his role as the Jewish Messiah. And she receives no help there, right? She has no right to approach him on that ground. She probably doesn't even know who King David is when she says that. Next, Mark 7:27, she hears Jesus tell her that his mission here on this earth is to who? Everyone? Eventually it is. but to the nation of Israel first. When she hears this, she moves beyond seeing him as simply the Jewish Messiah. She now sees him as her only hope. She sees him as being worthy of worship. And in Matthew's account in verse 25, it says that she bows down to him. She humbles herself at his feet. And she gives him the worship that he deserves and appeals to him for the help that she needs. Continuing on in verse 27 in Mark, now she hears Jesus compare her to a dog. This is the thing that always kind of stumbles people at this point in the story. Well, it's mean Jesus. He called her a dog. That's horrible. And we all know that the Jews looked at all non-Jewish people as dogs. You see, the word that they use here refers to this mangy mutt. It's used as kind of a metaphor for people who are unclean, who are filthy, and who are dirty. But when you kind of dive into the Greek, the word dog here is used differently. It refers not to this mangy, dirty dog, but to a dog that is a beloved pet in a house. The word literally means little puppies. It refers to an animal that is looked on as part of the family. And the image here is of this beloved pet sitting under the table while the family eats a meal. It sits there hoping and expecting that someone will just slip in a morsel of food underneath. The puppy can literally see the food. The puppy can smell the food. It knows what it wants and that it's within easy reach. It just needs someone to acknowledge that it's there and to give it a bite. I have to tell you from personal experience, I really can't relate to this. When I grew up, we had Great Danes. First of all, Great Danes can't fit underneath the table. They're just standing right next to you. And if you look one way for too long, that Great Dane's going to snatch your entire, whatever that amount of food is, off of your plate. But you see the difference here? He's not calling her this mangy dog. He's calling her essentially this little puppy, this little family pet. And I know there are a lot of people in here who have a family pet and how much they love that animal, as if it is part of the family. She says, I know that it isn't right to take the food from the children's table and to give it to the dogs, but even the dogs are sometimes treated to a morsel from the table. All I am asking for is a crumb. She wasn't asking for everything, just a puppy's portion. She was only asking for crumbs from the master's table. Can you see how Jesus took this woman and her small faith and led her along and helped her grow her faith? There was no immediate answer of, yep, boom, it's done. He worked with her. And I think it's fair to point out that the obstacles of faith almost always turn out to be opportunities in disguise. And when we continue to seek the Lord in spite of every roadblock that we encounter, we will eventually see him provide us with the help and the care that we need. Verse 28 spells out the obligations of our faith. You see, a lot of people at this point, they would have given up. Jesus ignored her. The disciples played the race card. Jesus even compared her to a dog, yet she persisted. Most folks would have thrown up their hands in frustration. They would have simply stormed off, saying, I don't need this anymore. You know what? So much for your God of love, for your message of compassion, for this narrow religion that you have. I don't want anything to do with a God or a religion like that. That's probably the way that many react in our society when they don't immediately get what they want, right when they want it. But not this woman, not our mother. She persisted in spite of everything that was thrown in her pathway. Her daughter needed to be delivered from bondage, and her family needed to be saved. A crumb might have been all that she could get, but she knew that a crumb from Jesus' hand was more than enough. How much does your problem mean to you? How much is the problem in your life? How much is that mountain? What does that mean to you? Have you encountered some obstacles along the way that have made you simply just throw your hands up and just quit seeking God for the answer that you need? Financial, health, children, you name it. Be like this poor mother. Keep bringing that need to Jesus until he answers. Keep asking. Keep seeking his face until he responds. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. And in his time, not ours, in his time, he will hand you down a morsel of answered prayer. Matthew 7, verses 7 through 8. Obviously, I couldn't make that point and not reference the verse. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. And so now we get to the end of our story. Verses 29 through 30. The mother and her reward. And we read that Jesus responded to her faith, right? Jesus had tested her with hard words, and her faith had risen to the challenge. Here was this Gentile dog that had more faith than the Jewish scribes, Pharisees, Sadducees, and priests. And this is the kind of faith that excites the Lord, is it not? Jesus rewarded her faith. He rewarded her faith by giving her exactly what she asked for. Her daughter was healed. Her faith was so strong that she didn't even ask Jesus for proof. She didn't ask for a receipt. She simply took Jesus at his word. She turned around and she went home to her family. And when she arrived home, she found her daughter healed and her family restored. What a blessing that must have been. What an excitement that she must have had in her voice and in her heart. Now, I realize that some people in this room tonight, maybe they're looking at very similar situations and problems that are every bit as hard as what the Gentile mother faced. I know that many of us have prayed and sought about our situations, and things, maybe they remain the same. I know that some may be discouraged, maybe they feel defeated, and you wonder, is there ever any use or any help that will come your way? But I think what we can take from our lesson today is today might be the day that the Master responds to your cries. Today might be the day when you see that mountain in your life moved. Today might be the day when he replaces his peace with your pain and you get the help that you need. And maybe you say to me, Jared, you don't understand what I'm going through. You don't understand how big my problem is. Well, you're right, I don't. But Jesus does. He knows exactly what you're going through. Look, there's Jairus, ruler in the synagogue. He places his daughter in the hand of Jesus, and our Lord raises her from the dead. There's Lazarus, 4 days in the tomb. Mary and Martha placed him in the hands of Jesus, and Lazarus lives. Look, there's a multitude that needs to be fed, and they have no food. A few loaves and a few fishes placed in the hands of Jesus, and suddenly everyone has more than enough and more than they need. There's the disciples in a boat, in a storm, in the middle of a sea, in the dead of night. They're afraid they're going to die. They place themselves in the hand of Jesus, and they arrive safely onto the shore. And if he can do these things, and again, this is just a small sample of what he can do, then he can help you with the mountain that you face, the mountain that you're climbing. So I appreciate your attendance tonight. A little crumb from the Lord's table might be all that you need today. Others in here, maybe they need the whole platter. I don't know. I don't know what you're going through, but Jesus does. I don't know what you need or where you are today, but I know a God who is ready to make a giant impact in your life. Do you need to be saved? Do you need to be baptized for the remission of your sins, repenting of those sins, and living a full new life? Do you need a mountain moved in your life? Do you need to be restored to faith and fellowship? Regardless of what you need today, you can come to Jesus even if you sought him for it in the past and maybe didn't receive an answer. Today might be the day when he says to you what he said to this mother in Matthew chapter 15, verse 28. "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." Just crumbs from your table, Lord. That's all this woman needed. That's all that we need. Just crumbs. If we can help you in any way, I encourage you to come forward as together we stand and sing the song of invitation.